Welcome to Engine Adventures. Today we have the 2020 Toyota Sequoia, and it's the TRD Pro version. Okay, a few things to go over real quick in here before we do the off-road footage. You cannot turn off the traction control in two-wheel drive. You see that auto LSD button? That's all it does when you hit the traction control. Flip it to four-wheel drive, and then if you hold it down, it's still trying to get into four-wheel drive, but there we go. You can turn off vehicle stability control, all the pre-collision system, and your traction control right there. So you can turn everything off in four-wheel drive. And then to get the 4-low, same as every other vehicle with a 4-low, put it in neutral, and then flip the dial over to 4-low, and you have to push it in and turn it. And then it will, let's see if it does. It might already, yeah, that was quick. So it already shifted in, but then it automatically turns off a lot of those features for you. So let me go back to 4 high. I'll turn the traction control back on. Okay, so traction control's on, and then when we go to 4 low, it turns off the traction control and the forward collision stuff, but the track is still on. Let me see if I hold it down, and track is like ATRAC. There you go. So that turns off the ATRAC, which breaks the spinning wheels. In case you need to do it, it's there. You have that ability. I like ATRAC. This vehicle does really well with ATRAC, but maybe if you're in a mud pit or some snow or something, you need to keep your wheels spinning, keep your speed up. Sometimes it's better to have that off. One other thing I forgot to mention, so if you turn everything off in 4 low, track off, traction control, and the forward collision stuff, you can switch it to two-wheel drive, and that's how you turn those systems off in two-wheel drive. If you're in two-wheel drive, you can't do it. Flip it to four-wheel drive, turn all that stuff off, flip it back to two-wheel drive, and it stays off. All right, so one other thing, there is no, just like the Tundra, no downhill assist. This vehicle is big. You don't really need it, but it does make it a little easier to manage, and with it being, you know, their most off-road worthy trim of the Sequoia, which isn't really an off-road vehicle, but either way, it's nice having that downhill assist to keep your speed low, especially whereas the gearing on these, the Tundra and the Sequoia, isn't necessarily that low. So you are going to be riding your brakes a lot on the way down and trying to keep your speed under control. Let's go ahead, flip this around, get some shots of us climbing up this hill, getting some wheel lifts and all that. We'll do all the traction stuff to show you with the center differential locked, with it not locked. Maybe we'll even turn track off just to show you how well it works or doesn't work. And yeah, we'll jump into it. So the reason I filmed that short little section there was many other vehicles have had problems with the approach and departure right there, dragging the rear end, and I have to take a really steep angle so the front end doesn't hit. The Sequoia actually did surprisingly well, and you can see when it crests the top that it also makes that. I've had a few other vehicles that have bottomed out when cresting the top. This view also gives you a decent shot of how the suspension works on the Sequoia. It's independent front and rear, so you can see the body stays relatively flat as the wheels and suspension, independent suspension, just soak up the bumps. The bumps aren't being transferred side to side, as is common with a solid axle vehicle, so this fully independent suspension definitely smooths the ride when off-road. So you can can see the system actually has done a really good job of locking the two rear wheels together. They're both spinning at the same speed, and that's the auto LSD function. So as you can see, even with the center diff lock off, it does a really good job of transferring power where it needs to go. It does have a torsion limited slip center differential, so that definitely helps out, but the brake-based system on this is what really shines. So here the brake-based system is turned off, and even with the center diff locked, you can see that it just can't get the power where it needs to go. When climbing a hill this steep in four-wheel drive high, it does require almost full throttle to get it to overcome the brake pressure on the wheels. And right there, I pretty much broke the camera lens protector. You can't see the crack.
Well,
but
took a rock there, I guess.
I did have to replace that lens cover. So you can see here in four-wheel drive low how much easier it is for the Sequoia to make this climb without, going full throttle. I did have to give it a little bit of throttle, but it breaks that wheel that's in the air really well and just climbs right up this. Again, I want you to notice when compared to other vehicles we've tested how little wheel spin there is with that wheel that's up in the air. Here I do touch the side step on the driver's side just barely, but overall it does really well for how large this vehicle is. Underneath you can see those tow hooks and the TRD skid plate there for the front end protection, but further back you can see that the fuel tank hangs down pretty low there on the right and it's unprotected.
So for the Sequoia and Tundra TRD Pros, the things they do best is roads like this. The shocks on these are designed more for like a gravel, dirt road, where you can keep a little bit higher speed. This one's a little bit rougher, so you can't quite go as fast. This is more of a Raptor friendly trail, but the shocks won't fade. Driving this kind of stuff, you have plenty of travel. The TRD Pro shocks, these are Fox shocks. The fronts are like 2.5 inch. Speaking of which, I need to get a shot of those for you guys. And the rears are 2 inch, I believe, and that's on the Sequoia. The Tundra, I believe, has 2.5 front and rear, just for that extra payload capacity. But basically, these suspension setups are designed for cruising down rough dirt roads, getting to your fishing hole, your camping spot, and enjoying the outdoors. Toyotas are known for being reliable. Not that the other trucks and SUVs aren't, but it just makes them good for that kind of outdoorsman or outdoorswoman person who's going to be driving these kind of roads a lot, and it can actually save you a decent amount of time if you're not driving, my old 1995 3/4 ton Ram will knock your teeth out as you're rattling down a dirt road, whereas these things stay smooth, the shocks don't overheat, and overall they're just great vehicles for this kind of driving. Let's go ahead and get a shot of the shocks. So the fronts are coilovers. How well you can see that in there. So they're coilovers with those remote reservoirs, and I think there's an extra 1/2 inch of wheel travel on the Sequoia TRD Pro versus standard Sequoia. And you can't see the shock in that. Let me get to the front. there you go. There's the TRD Pro shock. So these are just monotube. They don't have the remote reservoir, and they're quite a bit smaller than the fronts. I believe that's a 2-inch, and the fronts are 2.5.
Thanks for watching Engine Adventures off-road review of the 2020 Sequoia TRD Pro. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, and make sure to ring the bell so you get notifications for any upcoming videos we may be releasing. We are now going to be dividing the videos into 2 sections, one for the main vehicle review and then a separate one for the off-road portion of the review.